In the heart of the 19th century, the British Empire was a global machine and its fuel was gold. From the vaults of London, a steady stream of bullion flowed out to the farthest corners of the world, paying for armies, funding trade, and projecting the immense power of Queen Victoria's reign. Transporting this wealth was an operation of utmost security, a fortress of iron, steel, and procedure designed by the greatest minds of the industrial age. It was a system believed to be perfect, impenetrable, and completely secure. But in 1855, a small team of audacious criminals proved that any system, no matter how strong, is only as secure as the people who run it. This is the story of the Great Gold Robbery, a heist so brilliant and so daring that it cracked the illusion of Victorian invincibility and became the most infamous train robbery in British history. To understand the genius of this crime, you first have to understand the world it happened in. Victorian London was the undisputed financial capital of the world. It was a city of steam, iron, and immense confidence. At the time, Britain was embroiled in the Crimean War against Russia, and the gold shipment at the heart of our story was destined for Paris, where it would be used to pay the wages of the British Army. This wasn't just money. It was the lifeblood of a war effort, and its security was a matter of national importance. The gold was transported in 3 boxes, which were locked inside specially designed safes built by Charles Chubb, the most respected locksmith in the world. These safes were the 19th century equivalent of a quantum-encrypted digital vault. They were made of thick iron and secured with state-of-the-art locks that required 2 different keys, which were held by different high-ranking officials at each end of the train journey, but the real security feature was weight. The safes were meticulously weighed before they left London Bridge Station, and they were weighed again upon arrival in Folkestone before being loaded onto a steamship for France. Any discrepancy, even a few ounces, would immediately raise the alarm. To the authorities, stealing the gold without being caught seemed not just difficult, but a physical impossibility. But to a small circle of Victorian masterminds, impossible was just a puzzle waiting to be solved. The crew was a perfect blend of skill and access. The brain of the operation was William Pierce, a 40-year-old former railway employee who had been fired for gambling. He knew the train schedules, the procedures, and the personnel of the Southeastern Railway Company like the back of his hand. He was a disgruntled employee with an intimate knowledge of the system's weaknesses. The technical expert was Edward Auger, a professional burglar and safecracker. Auger was not a common thug. He was a career criminal, intelligent, and highly skilled in the art of opening locks. He was the man who could crack the unbreakable Chubb safes. But the key to the entire operation was the inside man, James Burgess, a guard on the very train that transported the gold. Burgess was a trusted employee, a man who held the keys to the kingdom, or in this case, the keys to the guard's van where the gold was kept. His participation meant the thieves wouldn't have to fight their way onto the train. They would be welcomed aboard. Finally, there was Fanny Kay, Auger's girlfriend. She was not just a passive accomplice. She would prove to be a crucial player in smuggling the gold and, ultimately, in the unraveling of the entire plot. This wasn't a gang of masked bandits with guns. It was a white-collar crime syndicate, planning their heist with the precision of a military operation. Their plan was a masterpiece of patience and preparation, taking over a year to develop. The first problem was the keys. Auger needed copies of the keys to the safes. Through a network of contacts and bribes, the gang was able to get wax impressions of the 2 master keys from a corrupt railway clerk. Auger then used these impressions to forge perfect duplicates. With the keys made, they needed to solve the problem of the weight. They couldn't just take the gold. They had to replace it with something of the exact same weight to fool the scales at the other end. Their solution was lead. For months, the gang conducted a series of daring rehearsals. Auger and Pierce, disguised as respectable businessmen, would board the train with carpetbags filled with lead shot. With the help of Burgess, the guard, they would enter the secure van, open the safes, and practice swapping the lead for an imaginary cargo, all while the train was rattling along at 40 miles an hour. They meticulously calculated the exact amount of lead needed to match the weight of the gold bullion. It was a painstaking and dangerous process, but by the spring of 1855 they were ready. The night of the heist was May 15, 1855. Pierce and Auger boarded the 8:30 p.m. train from London Bridge to Folkestone, carrying their specially modified carpetbags, now filled with hundreds of pounds of lead shot. Once the train was underway, Burgess, the guard, let them into the van. In the flickering light of a lantern, surrounded by the noise and vibration of the moving train, Ugar went to work. The forged keys worked perfectly. He opened the 3 safes, revealing the boxes containing the gold. Inside were dozens of gold bars, worth £12,000 at the time, the equivalent of millions of dollars today. Working quickly, they transferred the gold from the boxes into their carpet bags and replaced it with the bags of lead. They resealed the boxes, locked them back in the safes, and cleaned up any trace of their presence. When the train pulled into Folkestone, they simply disembarked, 2 anonymous gentlemen melting into the crowd, their bags weighing a combined 200 pounds. The safes were weighed by the station officials, who, finding the weight to be correct, signed off on the shipment. The perfect crime was complete. For months, no one knew the gold was gone. The safes arrived in Paris at the correct weight and were stored in a vault. It was only when the French authorities finally opened the boxes to distribute the army payroll that they made a shocking discovery. The gold bars had been replaced with lead. Panic erupted. Scotland Yard was called in, and one of the most intense investigations in British history began. But the detectives were baffled. There was no evidence of a break-in. The safes were undamaged, the locks untampered with. The authorities were convinced it had to be an inside job, but they had no suspects and no proof. The robbers had vanished without a trace. The gang should have gotten away with it. But like so many perfect crimes, it was unraveled not by brilliant detective work, but by human weakness, greed, and betrayal. While Agar was serving a prison sentence for a separate, unrelated crime, his partners, Pierce and Burgess, decided to cut Fanny Kay out of her share of the profits. It was a fatal mistake. Enraged and scorned, Fanny Kay walked into the office of the governor of Newgate Prison and told him everything she knew. The trial was a media sensation. The British public was captivated by the sheer audacity and brilliance of the heist. It exposed the shocking vulnerability of an empire that prided itself on order and security. In the end, Agar, Pierce, and Burgess were all found guilty and sentenced to transportation, a form of penal exile, to Australia. The Great Gold Robbery was over. So, what can this 170-year-old heist teach us today? The story is a timeless reminder that the greatest threat to any secure system is not brute force from the outside, but corruption from within. The Chubb safes were, for all intents and purposes, unbreakable. But the system of trust, the human element, was not. The robbers didn't break through the fortress walls. They simply found a guard who was willing to open the gate for them. In our modern world of digital finance, the vaults are no longer made of iron, but of code. The heists are not carried out with forged keys, but with stolen passwords and phishing scams. Yet the principle remains exactly the same. The 2016 Bangladesh bank heist, where cybercriminals stole $81 million, was made possible by exploiting internal security weaknesses. The greatest data breaches and financial thefts of the 21st century have almost all involved an element of social engineering or an inside collaborator. Technology changes, but human nature does not. The Great Gold Robbery of 1855 revealed a truth that is more relevant today than ever. You can build the strongest vault in the world, but it will always be vulnerable to the oldest weakness of all human greed. If you learned something, hit subscribe. Have a great day.